Chosen one, do not answer them. Not today, not this time. I know you felt it. The pull. That familiar pressure rising in your chest the moment someone twisted your words, misread your silence, or decided they already knew your story. You felt the urge to type the message, to pick up the phone, to sit across from someone and finally make them understand. You rehearsed it. You organized your thoughts. You were ready. And then something stopped you. Something quiet. Something you almost ignored. That was not weakness. That was God. Because what you are about to hear is not a motivational speech. This is not a sermon. This is not a list of principles to apply on Monday morning. This is a direct word for someone who has been carrying something too heavy for too long. Someone who has been fighting a case in a courtroom where the judge was never fair and the jury was never neutral. This is for someone who is exhausted from explaining themselves to people who are never genuinely listening. Do not answer them. Not because you have nothing to say. You have everything to say. You have been through enough to write 100 chapters, but this is not the moment for you to speak. This is the moment for God to take the stand. Stay with me. Because what comes next is going to change the way you carry what you have been carrying. Before we go deeper, and I need you to stay because what is coming in the next few minutes is going to touch something you have been holding without a name for it. I want to ask you something simple. If this video has already reached you, it is not by accident. Hit the like button right now, not for the algorithm, as a declaration. As a way of saying, I am here, I am listening, I am ready. Subscribe if you are not already here, because this channel exists for exactly this moment, for the chosen ones who are in the middle of their silence and need to be reminded that God has not forgotten them. And listen, before we continue, I have to tell you about something because surviving what you have survived is one thing, but you know in the quiet moments that surviving is not the same as living. You feel it in the spaces, in the hours when you are alone, and something in you knows there is more. A version of yourself that has not fully emerged yet, an assignment that has not been fully activated yet. You feel the distance between who you are right now and who you know you were called to be. That gap has a name. And more importantly, it has a solution. There is a material called a Transformação Total do Eleito, 5 modules, a 30-day plan, 50 declarations, 2 exclusive bonuses, all of it in PDF, in your email, in less than 5 minutes. This is not more information piled on top of everything you already know. This is a system, a structured path that takes everything you have gone through, every fire you walked through, every season of silence and isolation and misunderstanding, and transforms it into the foundation of your mission. Because the chosen ones who have been through the fire and are still standing do not need more motivation, they need structure, they need a map. This material is that map. I made a limited number of units available in the first pinned comment right below this video, but please go quickly. There are very few units left, and this can come down at any moment. Go get yours right now before it closes. Now, stay with me. They called it coldness. But you were just learning to be still. They called it pride. But you were building boundaries for the first time in your life, finally learning that not every room deserves your energy, and not every conversation deserves your truth. They called it arrogance. But what they were actually watching was confidence after years of shrinking, after years of making yourself smaller, so that others could feel comfortable in your presence. They called it indifference. But you were at peace. For the first time in a long time, you had found a stillness that did not depend on circumstances, and they did not know what to do with a version of you that no longer needed their approval to breathe. They called it silence. But heaven called it preparation. This is the accusation you have been living under, not a legal accusation, not something filed in a court with papers and signatures, something worse, the quiet, daily kind of accusation that lives in the looks people give you, in the things they say when they think you cannot hear, in the narratives they build about your transformation that do not have room for the truth of what God has been doing in you. The invisible accusation, the one that says you changed and not in a good way, the one that says you became unreachable, the one that says you think you are better now, the one that says your silence is a weapon. And the hardest part, you tried to explain, you tried so many times, you sat down with people you trusted and you opened the most tender parts of what you were going through. You laid it out carefully. You gave context. You gave history. You spoke slowly and clearly, and with as much grace as you could manage. And they still walked away with the wrong version of your story. They still chose the interpretation that fit the narrative they had already decided on before you opened your mouth. That is the moment that breaks something in you, not the original misunderstanding that you can survive. What breaks something is when you realize that for certain people, no explanation will ever be enough. Because they are not waiting for the truth, they are waiting for you to react. They are waiting for you to lose your composure, to say the wrong thing, to give them evidence for the verdict they already wrote. Every explanation you gave became a new opening. Every time you defended yourself, you handed someone who did not have your best interest at heart a door into your peace. Every word you used to prove your innocence was studied, rephrased, and repeated back in a version you did not recognize. Not because you explained badly, because some accusations do not want to be answered. Some accusations exist for one purpose only, to pull you out of the place of stillness where God does his most important work. And here is what nobody told you. Not every accusation deserves a response. Some accusations are not really about you at all. Some are about the discomfort that other people feel when they watch you change. Some are about the grief of people who wanted you to stay small so they could stay comfortable. Some are about fear. Some are about guilt. Some are about the very simple, very human reaction that happens when someone watches another person access something they have not accessed yet. The silence you have been living in was never weakness. It was wisdom arriving before you were ready to receive it. God has taken the case out of your hands. I need you to hear that again. God has taken the case out of your hands. You are no longer the one responsible for defending the truth of who you are. You are no longer the lead attorney in this courtroom. You have been standing at that podium for too long, presenting evidence that the jury was never going to fairly evaluate, arguing before a judge who had a conflict of interest, calling witnesses who changed their testimony the moment pressure was applied. You were fighting a losing battle, not because your case was weak, but because you were fighting in the wrong court, with the wrong audience, using the wrong strategy. God is not going to clear your name through an emotional speech you deliver at the right moment. He is not going to send someone to read a letter on your behalf. He is not going to arrange a conversation where everyone finally sits down and hears your side. That is not how heaven operates. That is not the kind of justice that lasts. God is going to explain everything through your life, through a door that opens without you having to negotiate for it, through fruit that grows in the middle of a season that everyone around you said was dead, through a peace that people can see on your face and cannot explain away, no matter how much they try, through timing that is so precise and so undeniable that the only honest response to it is silence, the same silence you have been living in, finally reflected back in the people who misunderstood you. You wanted a chance to speak. You wanted your moment at the microphone, your moment to look across the room and say, "This is what really happened. This is who I really am." This is what you missed when you were building your version of my story. And I understand that. That is a deeply human desire, the desire to be known correctly, the desire to have your truth received. There is nothing wrong with that desire. God put it there. But God is saying to you right now, let your life speak. Let the evidence be so visible, so consistent, so undeniably real that the case closes itself. Let the fruit of this season be the testimony. Let the doors that open be the closing argument. Let the peace that guards your heart be the first exhibit in a case that God himself is prosecuting. You were never supposed to be the attorney and the witness and the defendant all at once. That was never your job. You took on that weight because nobody told you that you could put it down. Today you can put it down. Now I need to explain to you why the silence is not just a spiritual suggestion, why it is actually a strategy, a real, functional, necessary strategy for what God is building in this season. Every word you speak in defense of yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you gives that person something to work with. Words can be taken out of context. Words can be repeated in rooms you were not invited into. Words can be twisted, sharpened, and returned to you in a form you did not send them in. Words, even honest ones, even careful ones, even gracious ones, can be weaponized by someone who is looking for ammunition. But silence? Silence cannot be quoted. Silence cannot be misrepresented. Silence cannot be edited and sent to someone else. Silence is the one thing that gives your enemy absolutely nothing to work with. And more than that, silence is the environment where God does the most specific, the most surgical, the most powerful work in a person's life. In the noise of constant defense, constant explanation, constant reaction, God cannot reorganize what needs to be reorganized. The static is too loud, the energy is scattered in too many directions. But when you become still, truly still, not just quiet on the outside but settled on the inside, God can reach into the parts of you that have been confused and bring them into clarity. He can reach into the parts of you that have been wounded and begin the work of transformation. He can reach into the identity questions you have been carrying and answer them one by one, not with words but with experience, with evidence, with the undeniable reality of a life that is shifting in the right direction. Silence is not where you go when you lose. Silence is where you go when God is about to move and He needs you out of the way. Every time you rushed to explain, you slowed down what God was building, not because He could not work around your explanation, because He was waiting for you to trust the process enough to stop managing it. Chosen one, you are a natural manager of situations. You are a natural problem solver. You see the issue, you assess the options, you take action. That is part of your design. But this is the one situation where your management skills are not what is needed. What is needed is surrender. Not the kind of surrender that means giving up. The kind that means stepping back from the controls and saying, I trust the one who sees what I cannot see. The silence is where your identity gets clarified. It is where the noise that other people placed over your name falls away. It is where God removes the false labels, the wrong interpretations, the narratives that were never true, and He replaces them with something solid, with something that cannot be taken from you, because it was not given to you by people. It was given to you by heaven. And now I need to tell you what God is about to explain, because He is not going to explain everything to everyone. That is not the plan. Not every person in your life is going to receive the full revelation of what God has been doing in you. Some people were not positioned to understand the journey, and they are not going to be repositioned for the explanation. That is not cruelty. That is wisdom. Not every audience is meant to see every act of the performance. Not every person who walked through your life is meant to understand every chapter of your story. But here is what God is going to explain to you, clearly, completely, in a way that finally makes the pieces fit. He is going to explain why certain doors closed when you were pressing on them with everything you had. Why the thing you wanted so badly, the opportunity, the relationship, the position, the breakthrough, why it did not come when you needed it most. And when the explanation comes, it will not come as words on a page. It will come as a new door opening in a direction you were not looking, and in that moment you will understand with absolute clarity why the closed door was protection and not punishment. He is going to explain why certain people walked away, why the ones you invested in, the ones you opened your life to, the ones you loved with consistency and sincerity, why some of them left, why some of them chose distance, why some of them seemed to need a version of you that you were no longer able to be. And the explanation will not be painful when it arrives. It will be peaceful, because you will see that their leaving created the space for the alignment that God had always intended for this season of your life. He is going to explain why you lost the desire to perform for certain rooms, why you stopped wanting to be in conversations that used to feel important, why certain relationships began to feel like they were costing you more than they were giving you, why you started needing more silence and less noise, more depth and less surface, more honesty and less performance. That shift was not depression, it was not antisocial behavior, it was not pride, it was discernment arriving. It was your spirit learning to recognize what was aligned with your assignment and what was a distraction from it. He is going to explain the delay, the waiting that felt like abandonment, the prayers that seemed to go unanswered, the seasons that stretched longer than you thought you could endure. And when the explanation comes, you will see that what looked like delay from your position was precision from God's position, that the timing was not random, that what was being built in the waiting could not have been built any other way, that the version of you who would have received the answer earlier was not ready for what the answer carried. But this version of you, the one who waited, the one who held on, the one who kept trusting even when it made no logical sense. This version is ready. He is going to explain why the defense never worked, why every time you tried to prove yourself, you ended up more exhausted and less understood than before. And the explanation will be simple. Because you were defending yourself to an audience that God was not addressing. Because the people you were trying to convince were not the ones God assigned to witness this chapter of your story. Because the vindication was never meant to come from them. God is going to explain why He allowed some people to believe the wrong version of your story for a season. And this one is going to require maturity to receive, so stay with me. He allowed it because the wrong audience needed to self-select out of your life. Because some people needed to show you who they were before the next level. Because the ones who walked away based on a misunderstanding were not meant to be present in the next chapter. Their departure was God's editing. Their misunderstanding was God's filter. He is going to explain why the weight came, why the heaviness settled on your chest in certain seasons, why the tears came without a clear reason, why there were nights when you felt the grief of something you could not name, and the explanation will not remove the memory of the pain, but it will give the pain a purpose. It will show you that the weight was breaking something in you that needed to be broken, something that was keeping you attached to what God was trying to release you from. The heaviness was not God's absence. It was God's hand pressing down on everything in you that could not go where He was taking you. And finally, He is going to explain why the peace only returned when you stopped fighting. Why the moment you let go was the moment you could breathe again. Why the surrender that felt like losing was actually the beginning of winning. Because the peace was always there. It was just on the other side of the need to control the outcome. God is not going to explain everything to everyone. He is going to explain enough for you to stop questioning yourself. Chosen one, I need to stop for just a moment and speak directly to what you are carrying right now. Not the version of it that you describe to other people. The real version. The one that lives underneath the composed exterior. The one that only comes out at night, or in the car, or in those in-between moments when the noise of daily life goes quiet and the truth of what you are feeling rises to the surface. You are tired of being strong, not tired of God, not tired of the journey. Tired of the weight of having to hold it all together when everything inside of you wants to collapse for a moment. Tired of being the one who keeps going when nobody is watching. Tired of showing up with grace for people and situations that have not been gracious in return. Tired of being the one who understands, who forgives, who releases, who chooses peace, because it is the right thing, because it is who you are, but also because somewhere along the way it became something you did mostly alone. You are holding tears that you have not released. Not because you are unwilling to cry, because somewhere along the way you decided that if you started you might not stop, because the grief underneath the strength is deeper than people around you know. Because the weight of what this season has required from you is not something that can be summarized in a conversation, and so you hold it, and you keep moving, and you keep trusting, and you keep going. You are waiting for provision that has not arrived yet. And the waiting is not just inconvenient. It is faith testing in the way that only waiting for something you genuinely need can be faith testing. Every day that passes without the breakthrough is a day that requires you to choose trust again, actively, consciously, in the face of circumstances that are not yet reflecting what you believe. You are afraid, and I want to say that slowly and without judgment, because chosen ones are rarely given permission to be afraid. You are afraid that maybe this time the waiting is different, that maybe the silence from heaven means something different than what you have been telling yourself it means, that maybe the distance you have felt from certain people is a preview of something permanent rather than a passage through something temporary. You are afraid that you have misread the signs, that the peace you feel could be numbness, that the confidence you have been growing into could be self-deception, that you could be further along than you feel or further behind than you hope, and you genuinely cannot tell the difference right now. You are not crazy for feeling the shift. The shift is real. The change happening inside of you is real. The things that used to matter to you that no longer hold the same weight, that is not loss. That is transformation. The things that used to drain you that you have finally released, that is not apathy. That is alignment. The things that used to make you feel like you belonged somewhere that now feel hollow and performative. That is discernment. Your spirit is learning to navigate by a different compass, and the recalibration can feel disorienting before it feels like freedom. You are not weak because you are tired. Weakness would be giving up. Weakness would be returning to the places God delivered you from because the forward road feels too uncertain. What you are doing, holding on with tired hands, trusting with a stretched faith, choosing peace when everything in you wants to react. That is not weakness. That is one of the most specific and demanding forms of strength that a human being can exercise, and heaven is recording every moment of it. You are not abandoned because people misunderstood you. I know it can feel that way. When the people who were supposed to see you clearly chose instead to see the version of you that fit their narrative, it can feel like a particular kind of loneliness, like being in a room full of people who are all looking at a photograph of you from years ago and refusing to look up at who you actually are right now. That loneliness is real, but their misunderstanding is not evidence of God's absence. It is evidence of the gap between where they are and where God is taking you. You cannot expect every person to understand a journey they are not on. You are not late because God has not explained it yet. The explanation is not overdue. You are not behind schedule. The schedule you are comparing yourself to is one you created from looking at other people's timelines, other people's seasons, other people's visible progress. But God did not give you someone else's assignment. He gave you yours. And yours has a timeline that was designed specifically for the depth of what you are being prepared for. The explanation is coming exactly when it is supposed to come. Right now, before we go into the next part, stop for a second. If what you are hearing is landing somewhere real inside of you, drop in the comments. God is my defense, not as a ritual, as a declaration, as a way of marking this moment and saying, I heard this, and something in me received it. Like this video right now if you have not already, because every person who needs to hear this message is being led here, and the like tells the platform to keep sending it to the ones who need it most. And listen, I have to remind you about something important. The material I mentioned earlier, a transformação total do eleito, exists for exactly this person, the one who is tired but still standing, the one who walked through the fire and came out different. The 30-day plan inside it was built for this transition, from surviving to living, from enduring to being activated. The 50 declarations alone will begin to shift the internal narrative that exhaustion and isolation have been writing over your identity. The units are limited and the link is in the first pinned comment below. If God put it on your heart when I mentioned it earlier, that was not coincidence. Go get yours before it closes. Now stay with me, because this next part is where it shifts. God is about to explain everything, and He is going to do it in 4 specific ways, not in a dramatic moment, not necessarily in a single event that changes everything overnight, in 4 consistent, unmistakable forms that will build on each other until the clarity is undeniable. The first way God will explain everything is through peace. The peace of God that surpasses all understanding is not passive. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is not the silence that comes when nothing is happening. It is an active, present, specific peace that arrives in the middle of circumstances that should be producing anxiety and does not make logical sense given what is happening around you. And that peace, that specific, inexplicable, unearned peace, is the first piece of evidence that God is handling what you tried so hard to handle yourself. When it arrives, people around you will notice it before you do. They will look at your face in a moment that would have previously broken you open and see something they cannot explain. They will expect you to be falling apart because the situation objectively warrants falling apart, and instead they will see stillness. And that stillness will be more powerful than any explanation you could have given. That peace is not something you manufactured. It is proof. It is God saying, I have this. The peace will be the first argument in a case that He is building on your behalf. The second way God will explain everything is through fruit. Results do not lie. Transformation does not need a press release. When the change that God has been working in you begins to produce visible evidence, in your decisions, in the quality of your relationships, in the direction your life is moving, in the doors that are opening, in the clarity with which you are able to see and navigate what is ahead, that fruit will speak in a register that no one can argue with. You will not need to announce your growth. You will not need to post about your progress or construct a narrative around your transformation. The fruit will be its own testimony. The right people will see it and recognize it for what it is. The wrong people will see it and have nothing to say, because fruit cannot be argued with. You either have it or you do not, and what God has been producing in the silence of this season will be evident. The fruit of obedience, the fruit of patience, the fruit of trust that did not depend on visible evidence. That fruit is almost ready. The third way God will explain everything is through exposure, and I want to be careful here, because this is not about revenge. This is not about humiliation. This is not about watching people who hurt you get what they deserve in a way that satisfies the part of you that is still wounded. That is not what God is doing, and it is not what you should be waiting for. The exposure that God brings is not punitive. It is clarifying. Hidden motives will come to light, not for your entertainment, for your liberation. Because some of the confusion you have been living in, some of the second-guessing, some of the inability to understand why certain things happened the way they did, that confusion is being sustained by information you do not yet have, by motives that were concealed from you, by a version of events that was always incomplete, because certain people had an interest in keeping parts of the picture hidden. When God exposes what was hidden, it will not feel like victory. It will feel like relief. It will feel like finally being able to put something down that you did not fully understand you were carrying. The exposure is not about other people being embarrassed. It is about you finally having enough clarity to fully release what you were holding without understanding why. The fourth way God will explain everything is through alignment. The right people are coming, not the people who need a detailed explanation of your journey before they can accept you, not the people who require you to prove yourself before they extend trust, not the people who need you to be a version of yourself that you have already outgrown. The people who are coming, the right collaborators, the right community, the right relationships, will recognize something in you that does not require a long introduction. You will not need to explain your season to them. You will not need to justify your silence, defend your growth, or translate your transformation into language that makes sense to people who were not on the same path. They will simply see it. They will recognize it. Because they have been through something parallel. Because their spirit and yours will speak a language that was established before the conversation started. And in those relationships, you will understand what alignment feels like, not as a concept, but as an experience. And the contrast with what you had before will make everything clear. These four forms, as peace, fruit, exposure, alignment, are not theories. They are movements that God is already setting in motion. You may already be seeing the beginning of one of them, and not recognizing it yet because you are still looking for the version of vindication that your mind designed, not the one that God planned. Now I need to say something that requires the most honest part of you to receive it. The old version of you wanted to win arguments. The new version wants to stay aligned. That is a significant difference. The old version needed people to leave every conversation having acknowledged that you were right. The new version understands that some conversations are not about being right. They are about whether you remain in peace, whether you remain in your assignment, whether you walk away still rooted in the truth of who you are, rather than shaken by someone else's interpretation of it. The old version wanted to be understood by everyone. The new version wants to obey God. And obedience does not always produce universal understanding. Sometimes obedience produces the exact opposite. Sometimes the most obedient decision you can make is the one that looks, from the outside, like the most confusing, or the most frustrating, or the most cold, or the most proud. Because obedience follows a set of instructions that most people around you were not given access to. You are working from a blueprint that is not publicly available, and you cannot expect people to understand the building when they have never seen the blueprint. The old version ran after validation. The new version lets God confirm. And that shift, from pursuing validation to receiving confirmation is one of the most important transitions a chosen one can make. Because validation seeks the approval of people. And people's approval is inconsistent, conditional, and available only to the version of you that fits what they need from you in a given moment. But confirmation from God is stable. It is consistent. It does not change based on how someone is feeling about you on a Tuesday. It does not retract when you make a decision that does not align with someone's preferences. It is not dependent on performance. The confirmation that God gives arrives through peace, through open doors, through the specific recognizable sensation of being in the right place, moving in the right direction, even when the right direction is hard and the right place is unfamiliar. Do not post it. Do not send the paragraph. Do not reopen the argument. Do not prove the wound. Do not explain the assignment to people who only want access to your reaction. Because every time you post the indirect message, you tell the enemy exactly where to find you. Every time you send the paragraph that you rehearsed at 2 in the morning, you spend energy that was reserved for your next level on a battle that was already won the moment you chose not to engage. Every time you reopen the argument, you give it more life than it deserves, and you give yourself more days in a season that God is trying to close. Every time you try to prove the wound, you delay the healing, because healing and proving cannot happen simultaneously. Every time you explain your assignment to someone who only wants access to your reaction, you hand them something that was never meant for them. The new version of you does not need to do any of that, because the new version of you is not building a case for a human courtroom. You are simply living the evidence that God is putting together for a divine one. Do not post it. Do not send the paragraph. Do not reopen the argument. Do not prove the wound. Do not explain the assignment to people who only want access to your reaction. Let God handle it. He is better at this than you are. He always has been. Now I want to speak to the moment that is coming, because it is coming, not as a metaphor, not as spiritual optimism, as a real, specific, approaching reality that is closer than it feels from where you are standing right now. There is a moment coming when you will realize, quietly and without drama, that you do not need to convince anyone anymore. Not because you stopped caring about truth, because the truth has become so evident in your life that the convincing is no longer necessary. The case will have closed itself. The evidence will have done what evidence does, and you will look back at this season of silence and understand, with a clarity that is almost painful in its simplicity, why every moment of restraint was exactly right. The door that is coming will not require negotiation. You will not have to make yourself smaller to fit through it. You will not have to explain why you qualify. You will not have to perform for the people on the other side of it. It will open because of who you are becoming, not because of how well you can present who you are. The alignment will be undeniable. The conversation that is coming will happen without effort. You will not have engineered it. You will not have strategized your way into it. You will simply be in the right place, in the right moment, with the right spirit. And the connection will happen the way things that are ordained always happen, with a naturalness that makes you realize afterward that it could not have been arranged by human hands. The person who is coming, the one who will understand without needing the full history, who will see without requiring a demonstration, who will receive the truth of who you are without asking you to shrink or explain or justify, that person is not a fantasy. That person exists. And they are being positioned, right now, while you are here, while you are staying still, while God is doing the work of alignment that your silence made room for. The truth that is coming will arrive without drama. It will not arrive in a confrontation. It will not arrive in a moment of public exposure that satisfies the wounded part of you. It will arrive quietly, clearly, in a way that requires nothing from you except the humility to receive it. And when it arrives, you will feel something you have not felt in a long time. Not relief. Not vindication. Something deeper. Something that feels like rest, like finally being able to exhale fully. Like something heavy being lifted from a part of you that had been carrying it for so long that you stopped noticing the weight. And your name, the truth of who you are, your reputation, your character. It will be clarified. Not by your own effort, not by a speech you gave or a message you sent or a post, that finally said the right thing in the right way. It will be clarified by God, without you having to beg for it, without you having to fight for it. It will happen because God is the kind of God who does not let truth stay buried, who does not let the faithful stay permanently misunderstood, who does not let the story end at the place of accusation. God is not just explaining what happened. He is explaining who you are becoming. And who you are becoming is someone who does not need a human verdict to know their value. Someone who does not need a crowd's applause to confirm their calling. Someone who does not need the case to be understood by everyone in order to walk forward with confidence. Someone who has learned, through the most difficult kind of learning there is, the living kind, that God's voice is more reliable than any human interpretation of your story. Now let us pray. Now let us decree, not as a performance, not as a way to end the video on an emotional high and move on, as an actual moment between you and God, right here, right now, in whatever space you are occupying as you hear this. Father, I come before you on behalf of the chosen one who is listening to this right now, the one who has been carrying what nobody fully saw, the one who has been staying silent when everything in them wanted to speak, the one who has been trusting your timing in a season that has stretched longer and felt heavier than they thought they could bear. Guard their mouth, Lord, not just from angry words, from premature words, from the kind of words that come from the wounded place rather than the healed place. Guard them from speaking into situations that you have already decided to handle yourself. Give them the discipline of silence that is not passivity, but positioning. Calm their heart. The anxiety that rises when the circumstances do not match the promise. Quiet it, Lord. The fear that comes in the night when the mind replays every possible outcome. Still it. Replace the noise of overthinking with the peace that surpasses understanding. The peace that holds even when the situation has not changed. The peace that is evidence not of circumstances improving but of God being present. Strengthen their spirit. Chosen one, you have spent so much giving to situations and people and battles that took more than they gave back. Replenish what was spent. Restore what was drained. Strengthen the inner person with power, so that what the outside world demands cannot diminish what is being built on the inside. Remove the need for approval, Father. Uproot the part of them that still reaches for validation from people who were never assigned to confirm them. Replace that hunger with a settled knowing, the kind that does not require external feeding, the kind that is rooted deep enough to remain stable when the environment around it is unstable. Bring clarity, Lord, in every area where confusion has made it difficult to discern, in the relationships where mixed signals have made it hard to know what is real and what is fear, in the decisions where the path has not been obvious. Bring the clarity that only you can bring, not the kind that comes from overthinking, but the kind that arrives like a light in a dark room, simple and complete. Bring discernment. Protect them from what looks good but is not aligned. Protect them from relationships that feel familiar but are not safe. Protect them from opportunities that seem open but are not ordained. Give them the sensitivity to recognize the difference between what is from you and what is a counterfeit of what is from you. That discernment is not a luxury for the chosen one. It is protection. Bring provision, Father, for every need that has been waiting, for every area where lack has been testing the faith, for every prayer about provision that has been spoken with a shaking voice in private. Hear it, Lord. Move on their behalf. Provide in the way that only you can, in a way that removes all doubt about the source, and bring peace, the deep, settled, anchoring kind, the kind that says, I do not understand everything yet, but I trust the one who does. The kind that makes it possible to move forward, even in the absence of full explanation. The kind that chosen ones carry when they have decided, once and for all, that God's timing is better than their urgency, and God's way is better than their plan. Lord, let this be the moment it shifts. Let this be the moment the chosen one hears your voice clearly enough to stop striving and start receiving. Let this be the turning point. In Jesus' name, amen. If that prayer landed somewhere real in you, if something shifted just now, even quietly, I want you to go to the comments right now and type, I will stay silent and let God explain. That is not a superstition. That is not a formula. It is a declaration of alignment. It is you saying out loud in a space where words carry weight, I am choosing to step back from the defense table. I am choosing to let God be the attorney, the evidence, the witness, and the verdict. I am choosing to stop managing what I was never supposed to manage and to trust the one who sees the full picture. And if this message reached you today, if it landed exactly where you needed it to land, please send it to someone who is trying to defend themselves to rooms that were never meant to. Understand them. Someone who is exhausted from explaining. Someone who is losing their peace to an argument that should have been left in God's hands a long time ago. They do not need to know why you sent it. Just send it. Let God do the explaining. Like this video. Not because the number matters, but because every like tells the platform that this message belongs in front of someone else who is in the middle of their silence and needs to be reminded that the silence is not the end. It is the preparation. And before you go, in the material I told you about, a Transformação Total do Eleito, is still available in the first pinned comment below. If you have made it to the end of this video, you are exactly who it was built for. The 30-day plan, the 50 declarations, the structure that closes the gap between surviving and living. It is there. Go get it before the units close. And the next video is appearing on your screen right now. Watch it, because God is not done speaking to you today. What He began in this message, He is going to continue in the next one. Stay. There is more that is meant for you. The case is still being built, and you are not done receiving yet.